Right. Here we go. Off and running.
Hello, everyone. What's up?
What's up?
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good.
Rodolfo. I see some
Rodolfo.
people, some familiar names in the chat. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Excited to have you guys here. So we're going to have some things that we're going to cover through iPad and desktop. There has been some changes, some additions to both sides. So it's also the fun thing that we have now when we're developing is thinking about both iPad and desktop and what we're doing. And we got a lot of exciting things happening. And we got even more things that we're excited about that yet is not ready, that is still, as we say, cooking, that we're still working on. But I want to welcome Mr. Rodolfo. As you can see, he doesn't have a last name because he's that big of a deal now. He just goes by Rodolfo.
Sure.
So, Rodolfo,
there's only one, right?
This is your first official feature presentation for ZBrush, right? Besides all the other things you're doing? Yeah?
Yeah. Well, it's the second one, but it was more like a what's new kind of. Well, it's my first one with you, so it's an honor to be here in the same room, technically, even though we're like 9 hours apart. But
right. Yes.
We're in the same virtual room. That's what counts.
That's true. All right. So we're going to get going on covering some things for you. We're excited. We will be monitoring the chat. We'll answer as much as we can when we can in the chat, of course, but we're also going to be focused on making sure we can show you guys what has been added. So we are going to start with, we'll get right into it. We're going to start with some iPad stuff. Again, we're going to bounce around to a lot of things here. So we'll be having that too. We are working on some desktop items. So we do have some desktop additions for this cycle, but we've got a lot of other desktop items that are being worked on that are not ready yet for release. So there are things that we have done for iPad and desktop. So we will be getting into desktop things as well. But as I said, there's a couple things that take some time for us to get the features done before we can roll them out. And obviously the goal would be anything we're trying to develop, for both platforms as well too, where we can. So in trying to keep it steady and keep it going.
Yeah, just keep on rolling, man.
Keep on rolling. So I'm going to start with we're going to start just in some iPad stuff. So the big thing that I want to start with is the Pro projects. So we have two new Pro projects. I think it's a great example of some really talented, amazing artists. So we started this with Patrick 4D with the winter cookies as a roll-off for this. We've got a lot more of these that we're working on, and we're going to have more coming down the pipe. It's going to be really fun. These two are in particular really targeting particular items that are really cool, I think. So I'm going to start with Pablo's project. So the cool thing about this is what he shared with us here is a file that you guys could plop in your own tools and render off something that looks like what you're seeing here. So this is obviously his 3D model. And then he made a very specific material for this. And now you get that material. So you could assign that material to any one of your tools and projects, get this same look. Okay. But then the cool thing is when we go to render this with BPR, you can see it kicks in the filtering system. So even though the filtering system's not available yet on the iPad version, all that comes over. And when we get to the desktop later, I'll show you guys a little bit more breaking this down because on the desktop, you'll have full capability of this, right? So we'll zoom in a little bit closer to this and then do another render so you guys can get a little bit of understanding. So again, you're going to get this now shipped in the most recent version. You're going to get this on the desktop side. You're going to get this on the iPad side. You're even going to get it in the free version of iPad as well. You'll be able to access this. And
imagine just doing your own comic books on the go, man.
Yeah,
I can imagine this already. Just doing your panels, sketching on the subway or something.
Yeah,
and this is amazing, actually.
Yeah, so he gave us not just a project, right? So if I turn on Polyframe, you can see this model's pretty decimated down just to try and keep the file size really tiny because his original one is a lot larger. So we have some future plans for Pro projects where hopefully we're going to be able to share his even full-on, fully detailed, higher polygon version of this. So what also he gave us was in the brush palette, we now have some new insert mesh brush that he gave us. So down here on the scroll down to the bottom, there is a new insert mesh brush that he gave us. So you're also, if you have the subscription version, you're going to get this IMM brush. But he also, how he did some of this, the reason why I zoomed into his head a little bit is in the sculptural section here, there are some more brushes here that are Pablo brushes in essence. So you're going to have, and by the way, the little blue dot that you guys see, that's my finger. So that's when you see this blue dot, that's one of my fingers, or in this case, two of my fingers to zoom, just so you guys know that that's there. So again, this is the idea of Pro Projects, is letting you guys actually, the artists that you know in the community, the artists that you maybe followed and looked at, we're teaming up with them and getting files from them so you guys could literally open their stuff and take a look at how do they work, what do they do, and then guys, you guys are amazing as a community. They're sharing more stuff with us, i.e. these brushes. So you've got 5 new brushes from Pablo here. So these are right here. There's a brush right here. There's another one there. There's another one there, another one there. And then there are brushes here they share. So like this is a Pablo brush, right? So if I want to throw on some Sculptris Pro, I can then come on here and then see, just because of his material, right? It's just going to render with that material. And of course we kick in the rendering. So I can use my 3 fingers to change my draw size. So in this case, if we wanted to put some more like a little bit of a wrinkling through here, right? Even make these pop a little bit more, I can see that and then render that off and see what that's going to look like in the render, right? So not only do you get this project, but you're getting these materials, okay? Also, he is using certain textures and things in the filter system. So also in the texture, we've added these. So you can see up here, there are some new textures here and textures here. And guys, this is just the beginning. This is something we're building upon. This is the start of it, right? And from this point on, we're going to be starting to build on a lot of this as we go. Again, this is something we're working still on as a team. And then you can see there's another texture down here, right? So he also gave us those textures that he's using in the filter system, right? So you'll be able to reuse those if you want to, or in this case, you could use it as an alpha on your brush and things like this, right? So this is your first pro project. So if I go back, the other pro project we've got was from Henry Chervenka, which is really highlighting what you can do with ZModeler specifically, and especially since ZModeler is the big feature that we've updated. We've added some more features, and especially we've put it now on the iPad. Okay, so looking at his piece, again, this is something you guys are all able to go get yourself. If you have this, if you have ZBrush iPad or ZBrush Desktop and you have the newest version, you get these files, you can see what they did and see how they worked on this. So this is a file that's got a bunch of ZBrush materials on it. It's got some Redshift materials on it. And then you can see how clean that he did. And there's a couple of things I'd love to point out about what he did here. So I'm just going to zoom in here to the tire.
Beautiful.
Like, yeah.
Would you get that? I would get that on my car. That rim's perfect. Beautiful. I would get that on my car, even though I don't have a car, but you know, whatever.
You don't have a car currently.
Maybe a miniature car. I don't know. Like something like that. Maybe I can just print that, right? Just 3D print that car.
There you go. So what's really cool is he put like tips and stuff on the tire here. Like, look, here's a ZBrush tip of kind of what he likes to do. And then he put like all the features he actually used to build this car like on the tire. Like this is how meticulous and detailed Henry is. And this is why we wanted to team up with him and ask him, hey, let's really show off some things that we can do with ZModeler. I love the license plate. And when I noticed it, when I was turning his model around, when he gave it to us, it made me chuckle and laugh, you know. ZModeler forever. Still makes me chuckle. I don't know. So obviously this has been a really cool project to get. Again, this just gets shipped with ZBrush now, and there you go, you've got it. So with that said, let me dive into ZModeler a little bit here too, so you guys can work about that. And then let me show you a couple other little things, and then we're gonna show you that, and then Rodolfo's gonna go, and then I'm gonna go again. So first thing that I kind of want to just show off, this was something that's a feature request. It's not a big thing, but this obviously is our Control, Shift, and Alt and Space bar. So in our settings now, if you go to our UI options here, you can now make this be different sizes all the way up to 3K, 2K. So it's something small, but honestly, talking to a lot of users using the iPad version, a lot of people wanted this to be a lot bigger. So we added that ability in here as well. We're continuing to update the UI, i.e. picking colors. We now have our spectrum and slider to pick the background color in our document. So these are just little things that we're trying to do to push the element. Okay, so right now I've also changed, as you can see, I've changed my labels. So you can use Apple labels, you can use the icons, You can use Control Shift Alt and Space. I like the icons because the mask icon still makes me laugh. It's still
the mask icon. It's genius. To be honest.
It's the okay. So one thing that's important here is customability, right? So when we made the iPad version, we wanted to allow you guys to customize this bottom bar. We wanted you guys allowed to customize this, right? So I've got some custom menu in here. This is something that I live by, especially I don't use the keyboard on my iPad. So for example, if we now say, let's select the top of this again, and then I say group by masking, this is in essence Control W, what I'm pressing right now. That's what this is. This is Control W, right? So I'm bringing this stuff forward because I am liking being mobile with ZBrush. So I'm on a plane, I'm on a park, or wherever I am, and I don't have a keyboard nor a mouse or anything like that. So I'm really trying to live in this world of understanding, because also development-wise, this helps me figure out and the team figure out how do we maybe take advantage of the device, how do we take advantage of touch and things like this. Okay, and it's also giving a lot of experiments for us to think about stuff that we're working on for the desktop. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we've got brewing and cooking, trust me, all right? There is stuff happening. I promise. Okay.
Ooh, I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
So, me.
With that said, things that you can do, right, to just stream up the process. Obviously, there's times where I want to have certain menus, but maybe I want to have like this, the tool menu open. I can obviously change the size of that so it doesn't take up as much space, because ZBrush for iPad works all the way down to a mini. So even on a ZBrush, you can use an iPad mini with it and it works. So we have to think about things like this. So this is now a floating tray, okay, that you can keep adding. So for example, if I want to come back here, let's just say, let's grab the brush. I pull this off and you can see now it's been added. So now I have 2 icons here, but I can also add through here, this icon at the bottom. And if I hit add palette, what's new is you notice at the very bottom, there is now, well, Rodolfo's going to get to that.
Oh, you spoiled them. Spoiled them.
So the custom menu now can stay open. So you actually don't need to hold space bar and open it and then have this positioned where you want. You can now just keep it open in a tray and have it sitting there if you want to have that. So this is something we added. Again, this is based upon feedback from our beta testers, feedback from you guys. We are seeing what you guys are saying online for sure, and making sure we continually have some stuff that we're working on and getting these in as we move along. All right, so obviously the big item here is one of our big items is ZModeler. So this got a brand new UI because what's working on the desktop isn't necessarily going to work on an iPad. And again, we got to take in the context of there's multiple different iPad sizes. So that is something we got to be very mindful of. All right, so the biggest thing we got here, so you don't have to hover over any of the components. You can though. So if I'm hovering over anything here, again, just like here, I'll move this back over because I like having this going in here, right? So now if you hold spacebar, it can pull up the menu and you can go through here. But what we've obviously done is you no longer need to have this open. And because we did this is because every iPad does not have hover state ability. Okay, so it's not possible. So we had to come up with a way to look at this menu and change it and have it work differently as well, because hover state is only available in M2 chipped iPads and up now. So this is what we did. We said, hey, let's categorize some things here. And not only categorize, let's allow you to color code them. Let's have them color coded. Let's have them to be collapsible. And then a really quick about these categories, so you guys have an understanding what these categories and how we did this, is anything in the orange is stuff that you're going to do to change the topology. In essence, you're extruding, right? You're adding and inserting an edge loop. You're splitting vertex points or something like that, or you're merging vertex points. Like you're changing the actual topology. The green is you're doing stuff to the topology, like, hey, I'm creasing the edges. I'm going to move some faces around. I'm going to slide. I'm going to spin, things like that. You're not changing the actual vertex count, face count, or anything like that. The blue is your transforms. Like I want to do some moving. I want to scale. I want to transpose, set symmetry, right? This is just taking advantage of that. Selection is selection. I'm going to highlight something new that's here too. And then your other is your things that are ZBrushy things, which insert NanoMesh. So yes, now that ZModeler is here, you now have insert NanoMesh, which Rodolfo is going to show later for you all. So in essence, this is how this was broke down. Everything has icons. So all of the actions have icons. All the targets have icons. And then your modifiers are now here. So for example, we go to QMesh, you see this updates. You can click on, hey, do I want 10th step, quarter step? What is it that I like to use with ZModeler? Okay, and then what I would like to point out is if you long press on any of these, there's also the notes here are here now on this version. So you have the auto note here so that when you hold down long press, we will actually tell you what these targets do, what these actions do. And if you hold down any of the modifiers, we also have your notes here. So this was the first step of seeing what we could do and how we can move along, right? So then obviously, if I'm looking here, I'm going to solo out just the top of his car, right? And we'll turn on polyframe. So now I have this, and now I can just do that to start doing a QMesh to add maybe some element in there that I want to have some kind of little bump happening through that. I don't know why I would do that. Henry, if you're watching this, sorry, I'm messing up your piece. But this is about the idea of what we're doing. You still have the ability to hover over and see the actions that you are doing. As you can see through here, that is still maintained through that. Okay, so as a person that also uses ZModeler quite a bit, we have our face actions, we have our edge actions, we have our vertex actions. So one of the things that we've always wanted, I'm going to go back to my edge action. I'm going to say inserts, single edge. What we have now is a snapping ability. So you guys can now snap directly in the middle of between any edges now. You could do it by quarter snaps, or you can customize that. So what does that mean to you guys? Is that, hey, I need to add another edge loop in here. I can now come through here, and this is the free snap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off dynamic right now for this so you guys can see it a little bit better. And now you can see I can just freely do this, right? And then I'm going to hold my Alt key to delete it. And what I'm going to do now is pop this back open. We're going to turn on snap, and I'm going to say, let's do a half snap. And then now when I click on this, as I get close to the middle, it automatically snaps to the middle. And if I keep going, it'll unsnap to the middle, right? So that's what these options are now. This is a new feature that allow you, I can do quarter snaps, which means there's going to be 4 snap quartering in here now. And then you have the ability to do a custom, which is now a slider that goes all the way to 2 and all the way to 10. So you can go all the way up to 10th, right? And then now I have a lot more snaps going through here for me to be able to just repeat things like I'm doing right now, repeating that same snapping on all those edge loops coming through there. Now, to speed up, try and speed up our process a little bit, going through that, what I would want you to keep an eye on is up here in the top. Okay, I got to rotate it so you guys can see what I'm trying to point at, because otherwise I'm pointing at my iPad screen and none of you will see that. So no bueno for you. So what I want to do now is say, okay, I now have this, but I want to now go back to just no snapping. So I can tap Control, and now I'm freeing, and now I tap Control again. Okay, this tapping of Control, you see at the top, switches to snap off. Okay, this little here, now half step. And then I press again, now it's quarter. Again, look up at that top portion, tap again, custom. So we're trying to see, hey, can we make this even a little bit faster where we don't have to go into the menu to do something like this? But I'm going to show you something else here in a little bit. I'll speed up things even faster as well. So
Paul's cooking.
We're trying. Okay, so one other thing that we added is, okay, for me, this is a big deal, right? So right now, currently, ZModeler technically can't select faces, edges, and vertex points, right? This is kind of a selection. Okay, so what I mean by that is if I QMesh this now, it does to all of them, right? It is in essence a selection of your faces. So this is a mode, and this is something that we can do in essence to do actions on that we want for face actions, okay? So there's 2 things we did here. Number 1, I'm going to undo this. We're kind of bringing this forward a little bit, and this is the things we're experimenting with. So with the Alt key is what I'm doing this with. Okay, so now I have that. I'm going to undo that. And over here, there is another icon. And this is the start of something that we are working on for sure. So I can now click, and now it's a check mark. And what that is, I don't have to hold the Alt key anymore. And now I can just paint with this. And I don't know if you guys know, you can also deselect by tapping any of the faces. And if you double tap, it deselects all of them. So you don't need this mode just to do that, okay? You can just, if I turn this off, you can do the same thing with the Alt key, right? If I'm still holding the Alt key and I tap, see it does that. If I double tap, same thing. what we're trying to do is just, this is so popular in Polygon action that we do things with. Let's bring it forward as our first step of things that we can bring forward here. In essence, we're starting to lean towards on the iPad and thought process of what we're going to start doing with the desktop modes that we can start building upon here. Okay. So with that said, since this is so popular, we added in selection, there is a new selection mode. So this is the temporary polygroup mode. But now what we've got is all the targets that are available to us. So if I want to say, let's do a poly loop, and then now I can just poly loop and see I can do down the entire part of his vehicle, get that all those polygons, right? We can undo these. I can redo this. And then I can say, you know, I just want to get this and this and this. So now it's just simpler quick clicks for me to try and get these faces selected with the temporary polygroup for me to go do those face actions. Okay. So these are two new things that were added, but I would say one of the biggest and one of the most important things that we've added are presets. So this is us taking a look at what we've always done with ZModeler. A lot of you saving out multiple ZModeler brushes in some cases. A lot of you want to be able to access things really fast. This is it. I'm going to tell you now that we have the presets, for me, for ZModeler, I am living in preset world on both desktop and iPad. Yes, I said desktop because I'm going to show you how it works on desktop here in a little bit later on. Rodolfo, I'm assuming you've been living in the preset world a little bit yourself?
Yeah. I just use presets for everything, especially if you have multiple actions, multiple targets for the same action. Yep. You don't have to go through the entire menu every time, which is like a time saver for sure.
So you can see right here, I have multiple Q meshes actually, right? I have a Q mesh single poly, flat island. I have poly loop. I have Q mesh PG all. That's not for me. It's not for Paul Gabriel. It's for polygroups.
Yes,
right?
it is. Yes, it is. Okay. Unofficially, that's the internal name. We call it like Crease Paul Gabriel. That's it. You know, like Crease Paul Gabriel, Q mesh Paul Gabriel. So that's what we do. You know?
Well, internally, that's what we do.
Oh, internal. Yeah,
it's all internal. So you can see here, I just resorted this, right? So there's multiple sortings. Also, you can do by the date I created these. I can do it just by the name, and automatically it'll use it by name. I can do by category because maybe this is how you'd like to look at it better. Or if you go manual, this allows you to sort them the way you are. There's a reason for it and why this is so important. So what's really great is you can also long press. You can see everything that I've set to this. I can edit it. I can duplicate it. I can delete it. So if I go into edit mode, it brings up a new one. I can change the name. I can say, hey, I don't want a QMesh action anymore. I want something else. I don't want polygroup all. You can do all of it right here, right? And so you can hit this plus and you can make a new one right out of here in this mode as well if you want, right? So from scratch, right? So let's say, hey, let's make another one. Let's do an extrude. Okay, and you know what I want to have on do polygroup all in my extrude. I'm going to keep the rest of default. I'm going to say, there we go. Okay, and now I'm going to say, let's call this extrude. Okay, and I'm going to say PG because I just like to keep it short, personal preference. I hit all, and boom, there you go. And then right now I've got it where, hey, I'm only going to use that kind of occasionally. So I'm going to put it below do nothing. So in essence, I have presets that I start to save out for my edges. I have presets for my polygon faces and my vertex points, right? And then you'll see there are a lot more things I may be doing with edges and faces, okay? So what is also beneficial for me and why this is so important for me is what we did to try and streamline this even more. Because we're on an iPad with touch sensitivity, you can actually long press and you can just get your presets right here. So in this, I can say single polygon, and now I've got a single polygon, right? If I undo that, do a long press, I can say polygroup all. It's all the same polygroups, and they're all going to get it. So this is just speeding up my process, and each one of these, I can do this. So this, going back to that snapping, you guys could save out, right? And insert edge loop snap middle, and then you can just save out and insert edge loop. And then you can transfer between that way. So you can see I've got extruding snap surfaces here. In here, I got to insert multiple edge, single edge. I got different things here. And each one of these are going to have the ability to do that. Okay, so what else to steam up this process is, especially when you're working on a smaller device, on an iPad, what we've also done is you can rip this menu off as well and turn this into a ZModeler tray in essence. And so now if I want this down here, because maybe this is how I'm holding my iPad, this is more comfortable for me to make my switches and make my swaps. And in essence, my hand's down in the lower part of my iPad now. So we wanted to have an understanding. And also right now I'm horizontal, right? If I turn my iPad vertically, I'm going to maybe hold it differently. So we got to factor in all this stuff, and then I can pop it back in. So before I hand it also off to Rodolfo here, there are also some things that you do a lot when you're working in ZModeler. This goes back to me. I like to have this, right, where you can see I've got creasing. I got my inflate slider here I like to use a lot. I got dynamics, so I can turn it on and off. With my smooth subdiv slider here, I'm just a fan of that. And some other things I like to use often for myself. So we understand that that's going to be something we want to build upon. So we have now a menu just for the ZModeler mode here, where we give you the entire dynamic subdiv here. So you just have it right there at your fingers right there.
And at your fingertips, no pun intended.
Fingertips, yeah. And so this is also something that we're looking at here. Also, creasing is a big thing. And then settings, right? Again, we have a lot of ideas we're growing upon. And there are some things that we are researching and looking into and building upon some things. To your question that you're talking about right now, real-time PBR, I will talk a little bit about some things a little bit later about stuff like that too, about some things. I'll share some stuff with you guys too. So in essence, we're really excited. This is something, even when we released ZBrush for iPad, a lot of people was like, well, where's ZModeler? You can see why now we just couldn't roll it out. We needed to do a lot of other things. We wanted to make sure we took some time with this, design-wise, thought this through and see even what else can we do with this and add features. So we're going to be now continually adding some ZModeler features moving forward. We've got some more stuff that we've worked on that isn't ready yet for this release, but there is more coming down the pipe, right? So I'm going to hand it off now to Rodolfo, and he's going to show you some more things here with the iPad. I'll be there. I'll be in the chat going through, but I'll let Rodolfo take it from here. So we're going to switch some screens here. So let's add you to the
let's
stage.
switch. Let's do the switch.
Okay, and
there we go.
You are now off.
On. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? I was in the background over there just enjoying some good old Paul demos, right? So leading on from ZModeler, what Paul was saying, we have NanoMesh, which he kind of spoiled for me. But we have NanoMesh. And NanoMesh is, for you guys that know me, you know that I'm a big NanoMesh guy and hard surface. Well, actually, Paul is the one that kind of instilled that on me. So it's that's funny. So basically, I have this tank that I've been building. This is still a work in progress, but I wanted to have a few of these pieces kind of like to a state where I could show you guys what we're doing with NanoMesh. So basically, you have these screws over here on this piece on the side. I'm going to turn on polyframe just for you guys to see which piece I'm working on. And these screws here are basically a NanoMesh. And well, actually, it's a separate subtool, but I use NanoMesh to create these screws. And NanoMesh is an instancing system that we have. If you're a desktop user, you know how that works, or maybe you don't, and maybe it's your first time, but it is on the desktop. Now it's on the iPad. So what we're doing is we're using a ZModeler. That's why also NanoMesh wasn't here, because ZModeler is kind of like the prerequisite. In order to create a NanoMesh, it's basically a mesh, a brush that has a bunch of meshes in its inventory, and I can show you here real quick, like an insert mesh brush, right? So if you go to insert mesh, let's do model kit. We have this inventory over here on the top, right? And this has, in this case, you can see there's a little number over here. This number shows you how many meshes are inside that brush. And NanoMesh is sort of like this, but it behaves like ZModeler. It's a ZModeler brush, in essence, right? So in order to convert this to a NanoMesh, you can just go here to your brush palette and go to your settings. And there's a little button here that's new. That's called Convert IMM Brush to NanoMesh Brush. That's called Create NanoMesh Brush. So if I do this, you can see that now my IMM brush just converted into a ZModeler brush. So this is now, in essence, a ZModeler brush. You can see I have my hover states, and we have the polygon actions, the edge actions, and you can see I have my presets over here, but we don't need those right now. So let me go back. You have you have our polygon actions, our edge actions, and our point actions. In the NanoMesh example, we don't really use, well, not necessarily, we don't use the edge actions, so they're set to do nothing, or the point actions. But in our Polygon actions, we have an insert NanoMesh action over here. And what this does is that you can pick any mesh that you have on your selector here, on your inventory. Let's say I want this fastener over here, and I'm going to turn on solo mode so you guys can see, and turn off that array mesh that I have over there. So that's a array mesh symmetry in a sense. And once you can see the action is set to insert NanoMesh poly. So if I just drag one over here, and let me just turn off my dynamic as well, it's going to draw one of those meshes onto that polygon. But this is, as you can see, I have polyframe on, and it's not showing the polyframe of that mesh. That's because that's not actual geometry yet. It's just an instance, right? So I can go over here and start drawing multiple of those. Let's just go like that, start drawing multiple instances of different meshes. And then you can see there's a PolyGroup ID for each one. And this gives us the ability to go over here under our NanoMesh subpalette, under the tool palette, and just scroll through those indexes. So this index is basically, each polygroup is a different index, right? So we have that, and these are all the different kind of like screws that are fasteners that I just drew on the surface. Now, and to showcase what I mean when I said that I built those entire screws like for this piece using NanoMesh, and let's say I want to start by using, like, let's say this fasteners 15. And what I want to do is I want to actually spawn a bunch of these at once. So you have multiple ways to go about it. You can do it by polygroup. So you can go to your actions, to your polygroup actions. And you can do it all polygons. So all of a sudden, I'm just spawning fasteners everywhere. And this is kind of trippy, but you know, and it is a single polygroup now. And if we go to your NanoMesh, we only have one index, right? And you can start tweaking that. And I'm going to show you in a second what that does. And we can also do every single other target option that you have in ZModeler. You can use that in NanoMesh to assign different meshes to different polygroups. So in this case, we could also use, well, leading with that, our temporary polygroup actions to just draw those fasteners whatever we want. So let's say I want one over here, so I can start, drawing over there, and I can tap this to, it's not symmetrical. I can turn off symmetry for now, it's just to showcase, and turn off that, turn off that dynamic for now. So I'm gonna start painting some temporary polygroups over here. Let's say I want this, and I want to paint all of those on the top, and maybe those over here on this side. So these three over here are the ones that I don't want that one. So these temporary polygroups are now the ones that I want to assign that fastener to. So in my polygon actions, I want this to be, actually I don't need anything. I just need to do this as a single poly because it's a temporary polygroup. So if I just draw this, it's going to draw on all of those painted temporary polygroups. Like Paul was just showing, there's now selection actions on ZModeler, which you can also use. So if you want a specific edge loop or a specific polygroup and flat, let's say, you can also take advantage of that. And now we can tap to not tap, sorry. I wanted to do a different stroke, but my mind was an IMM, so that was a mistake. So if I go to NanoMesh now, under our tool palette, on our NanoMesh sub palette, we have the ability to edit that mesh after we've drawn it. So let's say for some reason you want to edit specifically this mesh, you can click edit mesh, and now we're just isolating that mesh for you, and we can turn off this dynamic and then switch from this brush to, let's say, my regular ZModeler brush. So if I go to ZModeler, where's my ZModeler brush? Okay, it replaced my ZModeler brush, so I'm gonna need to, wow, this replaced my ZModeler brush. Why did it replace my ZModeler brush? That's weird. Okay, I just reset that brush for now. Let me just go over here, brush resets, reset current brush. Does it work, or is it going to crash on me? Paul?
No, that's fine. You can keep going. It doesn't matter.
Okay, doesn't matter? All right. No, usually when it comes to this, and I have no answer, it's just a Paul question. I just go to Paul.
You're good.
Paul backs me up. So let's say I want to Q mesh a few of these polygons, and I'm going to Q mesh them just to show you guys real quick. So let's do like this weird kind of like extrusion over here, and then maybe tap another one. And now if I go over here and click this edit mesh button again, every single one of those instances got updated, right? So you can model this, and if I go back to my, again, which I kind of lost over here. So if I go, I kind of lost that brush. So let's go to my IMM model kit again. Let's do convert. Let's convert this to a NanoMesh brush again. And if I go over here and start drawing, you can see that fastener 15, where's that fastener for 15? Fastener 15 did not change. We did not change the root mesh of that brush, which changed the instance that was being spawned on NanoMesh. So if we go down here, we can also just hide the instances, hide the placement. So only those polygroups that are supposed to place that mesh get hidden. And we can change now, and this is the cool thing, right? This is where you can go crazy. I use this all the time to create like tile level textures and all of that, because again, environment art fan over here. So if we do like fit, for example, it's going to try to fit on the polygon, so that's going to look weird because it's going to try to retain the ratio of the root polygon. I can do fill and proportional. Basically, proportional is going to keep the mesh proportional, and we can clip it, and you can see if it goes over that polygon, it's just going to clip that mesh, right? And the cool thing about this is that you can start adding variation to the scale. You can start adding variation to the offset. So maybe I want to offset them to go and clip in the mesh a little bit more, or maybe just float outside of the mesh. I don't know why you would do that in this case, but whatever. So let's do this, and then maybe I want to do some rotation. So I can go over here and start, not on the Y, but on the Z. So if I rotate on the Z, and then we can add that variation. So now each one of those instances is slightly rotated. It's rotated differently. So slightly offset, right, in that rotation. So if we go down here, we can also now change the tiling. So if I change that tiling, and let's say I want to change the horizontal tiling to like 2, and now you can see that like horizontally on each polygon, there's 2 of them, right? There's a little bit, you can see that here they're kind of flipped, but that is due to the alignment. So if you go to align to the alignment, we can align it to normal, align it to the shortest edge, or, whoops, let me just undock this so it's always there. So if I go over here, align to the long edge, near edge, point order, you can do random alignment and no alignment, right? So you can change this as you please and test it out depending on your scenario and your use case. So on our tiling, we have now the ability, once we start tiling, we have the ability to change our pattern. So we can have a grid, we can have a diagonal line. So now they're all like diagonally placed. You can do random distribution. So now you have randomly placed screws on that section. If we turn off that polyframe, this is what it would look like. It looks kind of weird. It's like someone screwed this kind of half badly, but whatever. So let's do vertical line. I don't know. You can do this, and then you can also just scroll this. It's the same thing. It's just going through the patterns, right? And as we do this, then after you've finished with whatever you're doing in NanoMesh, if you want to make this actual geometry that you can edit, or you can split it into a separate polygroup, into a separate subtool, like I do, right? You can go over here under inventory and then just one to mesh, basically. Now, if I turn on my polyframe, it's showing me the polyframe of those individual meshes, which means they're actual sculptable geometry. And what I usually do is I go over here and I Control-Shift-Tap that, and then go A, basically to expand that. I'm using a keyboard. I'm kind of cheating over here. I'm using a keyboard to Control-Shift-A, but in case you want to do that, you'd also have the ability on the menus to just grow selection, right? But in this case, I have this. So what I can do is I can just flip that selection and then go to my subtool and split that into a separate subtool. And now I have this as a separate subtool. And this leads into another thing that I wanted to show you guys, which is in the VDM Brush functionality, which is basically to switch a single IM mesh. So I insert multi-mesh, right? So how do you say that? Do you say like IM brush mesh, or are you? It's just repeating, right? You're repeating the word.
IM and then insert mesh. Insert multi-mesh.
Yeah. But if you want to replace a single mesh within an IM, it's an IM mesh. It's weird, right?
Well, it's just doing a single insert, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. So basically, you have the ability now, if we have this as a separate subtool, we can go over here under our polygroups, and let's just run an auto group. So every single one of those is a separate polygroup, which for me, it works perfectly for what I'm about to show you, which is, let's say, I'm actually going to hide those because we don't need those for this example. I want to replace a single one. Let's say I don't like one of these. I want to change to like this Fasteners 13 or something. And what I want to do in this case, let me turn off perspective real quick, and let's zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing. I want to use my Gizmo to just control or masking button and tap one of these polygroups, and it's going to mask everything except the one I tap, the polygroup that I tap, right? And this has been there. It's not new, right? But if I go now to my Gizmo, and let's say I wanna make this Gizmo like align perfectly. This is something actually sounds also not new, but it's good to mention. If you wanna align that Gizmo, what you can do is go Alt and tap. Whoops, you have the Gizmo on. Alt and tap somewhere, and it's gonna change the position of that Gizmo. And if you wanna snap it, you can also just Alt and tap that and drag, and it's gonna snap to whatever point you're dragging it to. So if you just snap it over there, for example, right? So it's now aligned to that Gizmo, right? It's aligned to the mesh. So now if I use my Gizmo and I have, let's say, an IMM brush selected, let's say I want to go to my IMM model kit, which is the one I was using for this, and that's actually the brush that I have selected. While I'm with the Gizmo, my top bar with the inventory is still there. So if I just tap that, it's going to replace that particular mesh with any mesh that I select on the top here. And here's the cool thing. Let's say I want to replace all of them, right, with a single stroke. So I can go over here. Let's just unmask this real quick. And I want to tag and undo history. So if I tag this, ZBrush will remember the state of the subtool as it is, right? It's going to remember that. And now I'm going to do the same process. I'm just going to go in, Control tap with my Gizmo, and I can even just Alt and tap this little reset orientation button, because they're perpendicular to the screen, so it doesn't really matter. So if I go now to my Gizmo and just replace this one, for example, and I want to maybe rotate this, hold Shift until it's like 90 degrees, sort of. It's not really 90 degrees, doesn't matter. So, and then I just slide it in till it's like, yeah, it's like kind of like clipping, or maybe I want to offset it a little bit. And now as I do this, remember that I tagged that undo history, so I can just go over here and clear my mask and go under subtools, and there's not subtool, geometry, and go to repeat the similar parts, and I can just apply, and it's going to replace every single one of those, right? So if you have that ability to just change one of those and test it out and see how you like it, and then just repeat to every single one of those, and it will retain scale. If you drew that with an IMM, for example, and it had different scales, and then you change that, it would retain scale. Am I right, Paul? It retains scale, because I remember that was the thing, right?
It's going to look at the scale of actually each individual mesh.
Yeah.
So in your scenario, you had them all the same size.
Yeah.
You had some of them tinier and some of them bigger. When you did that repeat the last, it would have kept all those scenarios still also the same. It would have kept the replacement would have kept them tiny, would have kept them large, and kept them medium. All that would have worked for you. And it's not just replacement for this feature. It is masking can be applied across all. Poly paint can be across all.
Yeah.
Sculpting can be sent across all. So, and then this is a newer feature that we've done in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That you would have to have the newer version of ZBrush to get this feature.
Yeah, for sure. And sculpting wise as well, this is like super useful for me as an environment artist. Like if you're just sculpting like some tileable texture, some walls or some models, some props, and then you're like you have multiple instances of that prop along a subtool, and you want to repeat those strokes. Let's say you're just doing some edge wear or something, and you're like, oh, but I already had all of these rocks here. I don't want to sculpt every one of those individually. Just repeat the similar parts, and it just applies to all of them, right? Which is super cool. So moving on, I think that was the gist of it. Do you have anything else to add, Paul? Is there any questions? Actually, I don't think we have had.
You keep going. I got the questions. You keep going.
All right.
The next edition.
Alrighty then. So let's go into the juice. And this is, I'm a little bit crazy, so I kind of like this topic. And most people go like, oh no, this is kind of like not the less fun topic, let's say, of the evening. But it's UVs. Yay. I'm crazy, I know. But we're going to go through two things that we just added. Well, one of them due to the addition of ZModeler. The other one because it's been requested, and it's also using kind of like the same unfold, unwrap underneath it. And you can see I'm hovering over it right there. But we also have let's go through UV Master first. Okay, so UV Master was just introduced to ZBrush for iPad. This has been in the desktop for a while as a Z plugin, right? And UV Master, let me just open up a different project for this. Let me just open up, I don't know, like, oh, let's do a new sculpt from, let's do, which one has cool, like, let's do the demo head. I don't know, like demo female head. It's going to be tough because it has like some like it has the interior of the eyes and the mouth, but the mouth bag and all that. But it's just to go through and you guys, you can see if you're new to UV Master, you can see how fast this can be. If you just want to do like a bunch of UV passes, or if you just want to apply a surface noise using UVs or a texture or something like that, this is the way to go. It's like super fast. So UV Master is a one-click solution in essence for running your UVs, right? And it does a pretty good job. If you just click Unwrap, that's fine. And obviously, then you'd need some more control. So if you just run an Unwrap on this, and then you want to go in and do a flatten. So you want to flatten these UVs to preview them. You already have some UVs. That was super fast. And obviously these are kind of like atrocious for a head, right? You want to look at this and go crazy if you show this to any texture artist. But it is fast and it is there, right? So you don't need to go through and just, do your Unwrap and then sort of like relax your UVs or whatever. It does everything for you. And now with the next step, you can see like we have step 1, step 2. You have all of these like the 3 utilities. So here is what I want to touch upon is the enable control painting. Not a lot of people know that this is here. Even like people from desktop, they just think of UV Master as a one-click solution and that's it. And that is just the basic of it. That's the surface level of UV Master. So if we go over here, and we can also use polygroups, but if we enable control painting, now you have to select or tell it. Let me just undock this again. You have to tell it if you want to protect, attract, or erase those two options. So protect is going to protect your mesh from seam cutting. So if you just protect, let's say this area over here, so look at those red eyes to it. As this girl's been doing some stuff that she shouldn't. So if you start protecting that face, that part of the face, like the front of the face, you usually don't want any seams, right? Because you're going to have most of your skin detail is going to be showing through. Your character is going to be on a cinematic or something. You're going to have close-ups, so you don't want to have those seams be visible. So if you start protecting this, and now let's just do run an Unwrap with this, just so you guys can see. If I run an Unwrap, and there's obviously there's wait, where is that? Oh, where's the there's no, okay, that's in the other menu. Sorry, I'm getting confused. So if I do flatten, you can see like the front of the face, well, it tried to not have, well, it had the mouth bag, I didn't paint the mouth bag, but it tried to protect the front of the face from having those seams, right? So now if I go back and do protect, it still retained that, so I can edit this. I can go to attract, for example, and I want to attract all of my seams to the back of the head, because you're going to have hair. You're going to have either hair cards or actual hair with simulation or sculpted hair on top of it if you're doing like 3D printing or something like that, and you want to apply some surface noise but have like proper UVs. So you want to start like painting this back, so it's going to try to push every seam onto there. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit of an issue with the ear, but it can also just protect the ear, and then just use maybe paint a polygroup around it. Just have that be a separate polygroup, and then tap that polygroup button, and it's going to have that polygroup be its own separate shell, right? So if you go now and do like an Unwrap again, and you're going to see that if you flatten this, you can check the seams as well. If you click check seams, it's going to tell you where it did the seams. It didn't do a pretty good job, actually. So let's do protect again, attract. Let's see. Okay, that's fine. Let's attract some seams over here on the bottom. We don't care about this. So if we do this, and then I can maybe erase, and erase basically is going to go through. It's going to delete that polypaint. This is using polypaint basically to control where the seams are, but it's a specific color. So I would just tap these two buttons to do that. I want to use the paintbrush. I would just make sure that I'm using these buttons because it's assigning a specific polypaint color. So if I do this, and now if I click Unwrap, it's gonna, let me check the seams. Okay, there we go. It's gonna try to keep it over there. This is weird. It's going around the ear. So for polygroups, let's say I'm gonna go here and turn off that perspective. Let's say let's do a quick polygroup up here. So let's actually just select this side of oh, look at that, beautiful. So if I just select this, and let me just unselect this, it's going to look weird. But if I just make a polygroup out of this, right? So if I do like a polygroup, oops, a daisy, just back here, see? And now this is a separate polygroup, and I have a little bit of an island over there. So I'm going to run an auto groups real quick. So I'm going to go to my tool palette, I'm going to go to polygroups, auto groups, and then Control-Shift tap that to hide it. And again, just run a group by mask. And now these are polygroups. Obviously, these are not properly. You'd have like proper like edge looping around this, and then just select that using ZModeler, right? But for the sake of the demonstration, let me just go back to the UV master. I also actually have it over here on my docked palette. So if I go over here now and I turn on this polygroup button and I click Unwrap, you're going to see that if I click and check the seams, it's going to have the seams around that shell. So that's now a separate UV shell that you can work with. And you can combine this with the enable control painting ability. And obviously you would need to spend some time just actually figure out where you want your seams, where you want the edges to be, where you want your shells to be placed, and how you want them to relax and unfold. Eventually you want something around here on this neck, or basically back here so you don't see it. But yeah, this is UV Master, and you can also just click use existing UV seams if you already have UVs and you just want to edit those, you just want to add some more, or you want to maybe unfold those. So this is pretty cool and very, very fast, as you've seen. It's just one click and it's done. Boom, right? So this is UV Master, but now adding to this, since we added ZModeler, there's another feature, which is one of my favorite, actually. This is one of my favorite features, which is using ZModeler to cut your own custom UV seams, right? So if you go to your ZModeler brush, and let me go back to topology, my ZModeler brush. So if you go back to your ZModeler brush, you can see, like, if we go over here to our, let me go back to UV Master, our seams at the moment are basically over here and going around there. So let's say I want to manually place a seam along the back of the head, which is very common, right? You want to go a seam that goes from the back of the head until all the way until your hairline, basically. So let's say I want to do that. I'm going to go and tweak my ZModeler brush in order to create a crease that is going to drive the seam cutting on UV Unwrap. So what we added was underneath our UV map, on our UV map sub palette, we have a new create unwrap sub palette, I don't know, menu basically. And this was already on the desktop, but it was just brought into the iPad because we just brought in ZModeler as well. So this allows you to unwrap based either on auto seams, which is basically automatically generating your seams, which is kind of like what UV Master is doing, and creased edges, which is going to look at your creases and it's going to cut your seams exactly where you put your crease ends. So if you want to preserve this, for example, these seams, what I usually do just to start is actually, let me just turn off check seams, is just go over and run a crease PG. So I'm going to go to geometry, go to crease polygabry over here, and then I have a seam around that polygroup, even though that's kind of like a weird seam, but it doesn't matter. So to showcase what I mean, you gotta go to ZModeler, and what I want is my polygon actions to do nothing. So if you click do nothing, this prevents you from accidentally tapping a polygon and accidentally extruding or doing some crazy ZModeler stuff, right? So you don't want to do that. You just want to keep it to the edges and your points. And what you want to do is you want to go to your points and you want to click Crease and you want to target to be the shortest path. And what this does is if you tap this point and now you tap a random point over here, ZBrush is going to try to find the shortest path in between those 2 points. And you can keep cutting all of these points around, and you can see where I'm going with this, right? If I want a crease from the back of the head, all I need to do, let me press that space bar here so it resets that. And now if I tap this point down here and I go all the way until here, which is going to be, I assume, like the hairline or something, and it's going to do a crease all the way back there, right? So now if I go to my UV map and unwrap by creased edges and click Unwrap, And now if I want to check the seams, basically, I can also crease the seams, by the way. I could do that instead of just crease PG, but whatever. So if you go to UV map and check the seams, now these are the seams, right? You can see it got rid of that weird seam that we had in the front of the face, but obviously you're going to have some stretching because we have some, as I mentioned, we have a mouth bag, we have the eye bags underneath, but we can go now with ZModeler and just start cutting our creases over here and then unwrapping again. And you're going to make sure that you're isolating your eye socket, right, and your mouth bag and all that. So now we have a perfect crease, and we can just go in with our UV map, and then we can morph this. By default, it's set to bump 50. This is because it has a sculpting ability. You can sculpt on the UVs, right? But if you, in my case, because I just want to check how it looks, I can just scroll this down to 0 and just tap morph UVs. And it's going to look weird. This looks weird. This looks like an alien or something. But you can see what I mean. It's like the crease from the back of the head is over there. There's the cylinder, which we could isolate it. So we can just go over here and just go, because I had edge action. So I can go to my edge actions, go crease, edge loop complete, and then just crease that edge loop complete. And now go back to my UV and, whoops, I need to click morph. It's going to crash. Oh, no. Oh, no. Look at that. Crazy. Yeah, that's because I Control Z. I did Control Z before. Oh God, this is crazy. Let me go back all the way back. Is it gonna? It's gonna go crazy on me. Is it gonna go crazy on me? No. Ah, there we go. Okay. Oof, that was close. Check seams. It's still looking at the seams for some reason. Go back until I actually didn't have check seams on. Is it doing anything? Is this doing anything? Okay. Is this? No, it's not doing anything. That's crazy. Okay. So let's unwrap based on creased edges. Let's see if it doesn't go crazy. No, it didn't go crazy. Okay, so let's do this again. Let's just run a crease edge loop. And then go back to our UV unwrap by creased edges, unwrap. And my check seams, there we go. Okay, that is poly painted on to the model for some reason. So I can just, let me just clear that poly paint and now check seams again. Actually, let me just, I should have filled the color because it baked the poly paint into the model for sure. So now we have this, and if I now unwrap this, not unwrap, I'm sorry, morph this. Let me go back to my UV palette, morph UV. And now you can see we have a little bit of a better unwrap. Obviously, we still have the mouth bag and the eye socket, but you see like the bottom of the neck is now a separate shell. That's because we creased around the mesh, right? So I'm going crazy with UVs, man. I'm taking a long time just to go through the UVs. But I don't know, should I move on? How is this going to work? Is there any questions? Do you have any questions for me, Paul, from the chat?
No, we've been answering the questions as we go through. But yeah, we can move on to...
Okay.
Into items, which I think that was your last item.
No. There's one more.
There's one.
There's one more. There's VDM brushes, right? So VDM was also introduced. We had the ability to create multi-alpha brushes on ZBrush for iPad, but as you guys know, if you've tried it before, there was no way to create VDM brushes, which is
before you go in there. Before you go in, open that other model, Ian, because I want to give it to them so they can see it.
The joystick. Actually, I was going to do the UV unwrap demo on this because it would be easier, but I got carried away with the check seams and all of that. So sorry, Ian. I know he gave me this model.
Just shared a link for you guys to get this file from Ian. So we've got a link I just put in the chat. You guys can go. It's just your name, your email address, and that way we can send it to you. You'll get this along with some new Redshift materials, which we're going to get into here at the desktop, some other things in the desktop. But it's for you guys to get this file that he is currently showing you. So we'll share this a couple of times, but there are the links there for you all to go get this file. That's it. I just wanted to make sure they saw it, and then that.
Yeah, this is the perfect model for you guys to try out the UV features, because it's very simple in the sense of like it's basically Z modeled, and the topology is all clean. There's like perfect edge loops around, so you can actually try out the crease edges workflow, the UV master workflow as well. You can just paint stuff in. Well, UV master for me personally, I feel it works better on organic surfaces, but also you can do that with polygroups because it's a ZModeler subtool, right? you can go through and just assign polygroups and check out how fast you can get UVs with UV Master, which is, I use UV Master for all my game props. I have to tell you that. So all my game environments use UV Master at least once. It goes through UV Master once, right? So yeah, just download that file and try it out for yourself.
No, good point, Comics Legend. Yeah, you need ZBrush 2025 to use this file because this is a project file for the newer version of ZBrush.
Yeah.
Obviously, Redshift is only available in versions 2023 and up, but we made which we're going to get into, a bunch of changes there too that it can only be worked in 2025.
Right. Cool. All right. So
VDM VDM it.
VDM. All right. So I'm gonna go back to my main menu,
and then I'll move into the desktop.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I have here, let me just go in with this samurai armor too, and I have this prepared. So VDM brushes are basically your multi-alpha brush, let's say, but in this case, our alphas are 3D alphas, basically, which means they have undercuts. What I mean by this is that you can get the ability to have, if you have like something like this, which is like a plane with some undercut geometry over there, which is like, well, this is a little bit crazy, but it's fine. So if you have any geometry that has, if you know what an alpha is just pushing your points up and down based on an image, right? A black and white image. VDM is a little different because it's going to look at whatever detail you have underneath and it's going to actually draw that out. So if I go over here and I make a VDM brush out of this, and I'm going to show you how to create a VDM from scratch, but in order to actually create the brush, you have to go through and select a chisel brush, which is basically a VDM brush. So any chisel brush that has these assortments of alphas, basically these are all alphas. You can see they're changing over there. So you can change that alpha, and as you draw them, you can see they have undercuts underneath the ear. There's some details over there. There's some detail underneath whatever points you're pushing up and down. So you're not just pushing up and down, right? So to create this, you have to go into any of these, let's go chisel shapes for now, any of these chisel brushes, and now you go to your settings, and there's a menu here that says create VDM brush options, and you can create from mesh, or you can bring one of these alphas and create a mesh from that, right? So in this case, if I click from mesh, it's going to give me that particular shape as a VDM. So I can just drag that onto any surface, and I'm going to show you here on the other tool that I have over here, which is this cool samurai armor, right, that I was building. And if I want to, let's say I have this, and this subtool over here is actually not this one. This is a raid, so the symmetry is a raid. So let's say I want to apply that over here, just that tiger face or something over here. And I have some polygroups, which helps with the masking and all that. So if I go with my Gizmo and control tap that, and now I can blur this mask a little bit, and I'll use that VDM brush, and I could just drag this onto the surface. And it's going to drag with undercuts, and you can see that there's the details underneath the mouth of that tiger. So obviously this is a kind of like a weird tiger that we're drawing over here. But again, we can now go and you can draw this, and then you can adjust, and you can also just have this, for example, you change this to, let's say, dots, and then go to your lazy mouse options, and you go to the lazy mouse, turn on lazy mouse, and it's going to work, let's say, up this step. So like let's do 1. And now as you're drawing this, you can draw multiple of those, multiple VDMs around that model. Obviously, this needs a little bit more geometry than this, but I can show you in a different model, like, I don't know, this, and just turn this on, make Polymesh 3D, divide it a bunch of times, and delete. And now if I draw this, you can see, I'll just up that size. You can see I'm drawing multiple of those VDMs. So now, in order to create a VDM brush, right, you need to start from, to create any detail. So you need to start with a plain 3D, right? And you want to start with a plain 3D, and you don't want to change any geometry deformations you're going to do. It's going to change the point order. So that means it's going to be affecting that VDM stroke, right? So the VDM is basically displacing those points based on that transformation. So you're going to start with a plain 3D. And then as you start with the plain 3D, if you just start sculpting, so you can start sculpting like this, and obviously I need to divide this. If you divide with a smooth button on, you're going to get those corners rounded. And usually I just divide it. I just do flat subdivisions, right? But if for some reason you forget, and you forget to turn this off, and you start dividing, and you're sculpting, you're like going crazy, and maybe you want to do, I don't know, do some crazy actually move brush or whatever, and you want to go like this. Whoops, this is not the move brush, and just move this out, right, like that, and then just start. You're way ahead on your sculpt, and you're like, oh my god, this is crazy. This can't happen. Like, you can't deform this, because if you grab this VDM, it's gonna look at that deformation. It's also gonna deform your brush stroke, right? So what you can do is you can go down, for example, maybe let's go down a few subdivisions and go to your masking. There's a mask by feature if you scroll all the way down, and you can mask the border. And now there's a mask on the border. I don't know if you can see, but there's a slight mask around the border. And now if you go to your deformation, you want to morph to grid. So if you scroll all the way down, it's underneath the relaxed plane grid, and you morph this to 100%, it's going to morph it back to that plane 3D kind of shape. And then obviously you want to maybe blur this out. Maybe you blur that mask a little bit, so it also relaxes that geometry. So I'm going to turn on polyframe so you can see. If I morph this to grid, it's going to relax that geometry back into its original shape on the grid. So now, to showcase what I mean by undercuts, right, when you're drawing a VDM brush. So if you go, let me just mask this again. Let me mask the border. I always keep my border masked just for safety, let's say. So if I start sculpting this, let me just start sculpting some random, I don't know, let me just do, I could have done like some snake hook without Sculptris Pro on, because you can't change your topology. If you change your topology on your plane, because the VDMs are dependent on your point order, if you're changing your points in any way, like Dynameshing, Sculptris Pro, it's not going to work. You can only work with subdivision levels. So if you use your snake hook without your Sculptris Pro and start going crazy with this, and then do, I don't know, some undercuts over here, and then do that, and then start sculpting. I don't know, this looks weird, but let's do some weird stuff. So I'm going to start sculpting over here, and you can see, like, I actually you can't, but you have some stretching over here, because obviously you're just moving points. You have that stretched. To fix that, if you want to fix, you know, that stretching of the polygons, you want to make it like they're let's say a little more even. You can always store an undo history morph target. It's not really a morph target, it's remembering the undo history. But you can then project that, so you can just maybe smooth this out, go to your geometry, scroll down those subdivision levels, just smooth that out until it's relaxed a little bit. And then under your subtool, you can just project that history. It's going to project that detail back. So I'm going to up that distance a little bit. It's projecting, and you're relaxing, and you're projecting again. And this helps you keep your topology more even, because then when you're drawing that onto a surface, you don't want it to deform too much, right? So once you have this and you want to capture this as detail, I don't know why you would, because it's horrible, but whatever. But if you just subdivide this and go back to your subdivision level 6, let's say, and now you want to
hold on, your screen is frozen, so we're not seeing anything.
Oh
no. Maybe the program you're using.
Yep, it's Reflector. Should I wait?
No, it's fine. We can move on.
All right.
Yeah, we can move on. It's no big. All right. So thanks, Rodolfo.
You're welcome.
That greatly well done. No, there's your little ship you made for May the 4th. There you
go.
Yeah.
I did a ZModeler. That was ZModeler, most of it. There you go. Live booleans.
There you go. All right, so I'm going to jump into the desktop and also show you some things that were being done on the desktop. Again, the iPad version starts at free, so you can get it for free. And then you can get subscriptions just for the iPad if you want. But if you get a subscription that is a ZBrush subscription, you get ZBrush Desktop, you get ZBrush iPad, and you also get Redshift. So you actually get 3 programs for the price of 1. So you'll get the activations for all 3 of those programs if you're getting a ZBrush subscription. So that is one benefit of going that route. But if you just wanted only to get the iPad, there are subscriptions in the App Store available for just only the iPad. The iPads are US. I'm giving US pricing. It's about $89 per year for ZBrush for iPad, or $9.99 a month. And again, there is a free version. If you want the full ZBrush, which we're going to start getting into the desktop version along with iPad at the same time, That US pricing, again, is going to start at $399.99 for the year, or you can do $49 a month. And then again, you'll get a ZBrush desktop activation, iPad activation, and you'll get Redshift as well. Okay. ZModeler is only with subscription. Yes, you're not going to get that for free. You're going to have a subscription in order to get ZModeler. Okay. So do we keep so what I want to start in is, again, the pro projects. These are shipping with this version of the desktop, and then this is where you're going to be able to take more advantage of this, especially with Pablo's project. So when we load Pablo's project, he also made a note here of things that you guys can do and play with. He's also got it set to where, obviously, with the desktop, we got a lot more things going on. He's got this set to AA half. So I'm just going to do actual just so it fills our screen up. So again, I'm just going to quickly just touch base on this so you guys can get what you're getting in this file. Again, you are getting the material that he shipped, okay, with this, which, again, you can apply this to any one of your projects, your tools, to get this same look he is getting here. And then rendering wise, he is using our filter system in ZBrush, which for me, it's a lot of fun. I'm going to make sure Redshift is turned off for now. Yep. And in the BPR filters, so you can see everything that has an open circle, that's a filter he has turned on here. Okay. And these are all real time. So when we hit Shift R and render this, or hit that BPR button, it's kicking in all these filters, right? So if I start turning these on and off, you can really, it's going to change the look of these because he has turned these filters on to do certain things. You can see there's a lot subtle stuff, but there are things changing. So obviously this is not there on the iPad, but on the desktop it is there. And then he added, see, another filter here. So this is the one he's talking about where he added another cavity in here that you guys can go play with. And he's using the outline cavity in order to just make a darker line. So if we, here, we'll zoom in a little bit more again. I don't know why I always zoom into the head, but I always zoom into the head. All right, and then I'll render that out. And then now this will kick in, and then there. And then this is now turned on. If I turn it off, you can see, hopefully in the stream, the difference there, right? So this is how he's doing this secondary look here. So this is kind of why we're teaming up with artists in the community, getting particular things of where ZBrush is being used. And in this case, it's obviously using 3D to create 2D. And I do know artists that are doing comic books. I know a lot of medical illustrators that are just rendering right out of ZBrush and it's going in medical journals and things like that, right? And then also Henry Chervenka's model here is available to us as well. He's got a mixture of materials on here. He's got ZBrush materials. He's got Redshift materials because now it's on the desktop. He can start doing a little bit more with this and looking at that, right? So with that said, ZModeler also got updates for us here too. So I'm going to do again this, all right? So we're going to solo that out. And then let's just switch to ZModeler, okay? So now that I have ZModeler selected, I'll turn up my dynamic. So we're just looking at this once again. So the same actions are available. So if I hover over an edge, you got an insert, single edge loop, and then you got your snappings here. So once again, I can do a half snap, and then I can do a snapping to dead center. This is something I've always wanted working here. And again, if I tap control, I switch to a quarter. If I tap control again, I'm going custom. If I tap control again, I'm getting freestanding. So on the desktop, so you guys are aware, we tell you up here. In fact, this is a look up here corner you guys should really be paying attention to. Lisa needs braces moment for me, is looking at what is going on up there. We will give you a lot of information up there in ZBrush. It's kind of like your command line a little bit. It's telling you things, right? On the iPad, we've got it in the top and the middle, but on the desktop, we have it here. So reason why that's important to you is, again, if I'm tapping control, I can see I just switched to half snap, then I switch to a quarter snappings, then I switch to the custom slider, okay? So that is available here. Along with, if you are going to a polygon action, you have selection. This is also here. So once again, I can say, hey, let's just this time do a flat island, and I can tap, and now it tries to find an island of flat surfaces to look at, and then just make all that a temporary. So in this case, this is where it would make the most sense. So it found all of those with one click. So instead of trying to select all of those, you can do one little click there and get there where you want to go, okay? So we've added those insert, again, edge, and polygon face. Obviously, the other big thing is the presets. So yes, you now also have presets on the desktop. So again, if I want to make a preset, right now we've got selection flat island. I can say make a new preset here, right? This is the presets I have. So what I want to do is this little plus sign. Let's just make a new preset. Now it opens the menu. And now we're giving you everything you have selected so you can visually see what you have selected. And I would say probably I want to call this select flat island. For me, it's probably what I would want to call it. And then click that, enter. That's what I want to store. Then I say save it. And so now when I hold down my space bar, you can see I got QMesh single poly. And now I got select flat island as a preset. I don't need to see the whole menu. I know exactly what that is. And again, now that there are these presets, I've really been diving and deeping and living in this, trying to maintain my presets and keep using them over and over again. So on the desktop, you can do other things with the presets. You can also have options here. So you can rename the presets. You can edit it. You can duplicate it. You can move it up and down, and you can delete it, right? So if I click edit, we're going to pull this up again, the whole menu, so you can visually say, you know what? I don't want this to be a select flat island anymore. I want a poly loop instead. I'll go in here and change the name of this, select poly loop. So that I have that, and then hit save. Okay, and then now when I hover over a space bar, right? I can have that as well and select poly loop too, right? So you can do continually, and again, like we mentioned before, the benefit of this is, you know, a lot of times I have multiple Q meshes that I want to do. Now I can just save out multiple Q meshes and have them there and have them sitting in a section, multiple selections sitting in a section. And I don't necessarily have to come back to, you know, like a full menu like this. I can just live in my preset menu. So this is really sped up the process for ZModeler, right? So those features have been added to the desktop. We have now the selection mode for your faces. We have the insert edge list with the snapping ability. And the presets was really the big one for us that really would speed up the process of using ZModeler for us, okay? So the other thing we did, and someone was asking about BPRing and things like this. So I know Redshift is something that some of you are using, some of you are not using. There are a lot of plans we have, guys. We got to do this kind of in steps, okay? You're talking about dumping a whole nother application, using it and shoving it into ZBrush. There are steps we have to do to get things to thoroughly move forward. Redshift is a rendering system that is BPR, okay? So it has BPR material attributes. So what I mean by that is all the materials here that we have are Redshift materials that do have BPR attributes. So I'm going to switch to something else. And again, this model's got some Redshift materials on it. So I'm going to switch to a quick save that I have. Let's switch to this little thing so we can have a quick little discussion here, right? So I've got an environment in here that I want to have controlling the lighting. So all this is going to be a factor in playing into our system. So I'm going to dock my material palette really quick and just have that in here with my render settings. Okay, I'm going to start rendering with Redshift. So I'm going to turn on Redshift up here in my render menu. So now that I have that on, everything becomes alive. And so in essence, what we're doing right now is we're converting the viewport when you go to render into Redshift to what somebody was saying. This is step one first, right? So Redshift does have an RT mode. So you guys, I can't say anything, but the only thing I can stress to you guys, I get it. We're trying things that we still can't give you yet that hopefully will be moving forward. There are a lot of things the team is working on right now that we will also be dropping some more stuff this calendar year, especially for the desktop, okay? So now what we've done here is if I got this material, what we've done is updated the Redshift material again. So the original rollout of Redshift was just the first integration of it, and it didn't have all the settings. In essence, all the things you would need to get certain things and certain materials to look a certain way. Now we have everything. So these sliders and all the color swatches is the standard Redshift material inside of ZBrush now. So what this has done is opened up for us to add more Redshift materials. Specifically in this scenario, we've added about 20 more Redshift materials. Okay, so like say Emerald is one of the new ones that we've added in here. So this is going to give us the ability to look at different materials and see what we can do here, right? So I'm just going to set up a little bit here just for the sake of streaming and some things for us to have an understanding of. So I'm also going to look at my lighting in here. Okay, I'm going to say let's up the standard light a little bit in here because this is what Redshift's going to look at. It's also going to look at this background that I've put in here. So I'm going to say, and this is the old building here. Let's go right there. I'm going to throw a little blur on this for me. So I'm going to say, let's do a blur of 10 maybe. Okay, and now it's got a blurring of 10. So there's still a background element there. Again, if I don't want to render in there, I can do this. It's still going to use the lighting. So this is being used, along with the lighting here, is being used to look at this. And then in conjunction, obviously, the materials now have all the sliders. So in essence, what we have is IORs, right? This is part of the stuff you need to start going down that line of PBR-based materials. Start having that. There's no texturing yet, but this is the next wave, is let's get everything else in there. Let's have this ability, okay? And for the sake right now, I'm doing a little bit of some rendering. I'm going to make a couple setting changes that I tend to do. Rendering always, it fluctuates by our system. So I'm going to turn off bucket rendering, and I'm going to turn on progressive rendering. I'm also going to knock down the settings. Here, I'm going to knock down this progressive iterations down to pretty low, like 12. This error threshold slider is a really important slider for Redshift. I'm actually going to pretty much turn it off and turn it all the way to 1. Now, the reason why this has gotten better for me is we have also added the denoising. So this is using Intel's denoiser in the render now too. So, excuse me, you have a denoiser for Redshift in here. And on top of that, we added all the AOV passes for Redshift as well. And you can use the denoising passes on certain passes if you do or you don't. You can actually turn them on and off for certain parts. So if you open up these options, the ones that can actually control, you can see here are the passes that I want turning on and on. And then here are the passes do I want to have denoising on and off for. Okay, so you have this ability. So now if I render this out, right, so I'm going to do a Shift R. What we're doing now is it's sending this information to Redshift. And now look, it's already rendering. And then there it's rendered and it's done. And then this is really, really low quality. And then this is going to be giving you a denoising effect after it. So, right, even just with this, I can start having an understanding. And on my system, it's running really fast. Guys, I'm not in a robust system. I'm on a Mac Studio M1. I think I only have 64 gigs, right? And I don't remember what video card I have. So I'm not on some big, massive tower or anything like that. So this gives us the ability now to have some really awesome new materials. And to your question about OpenPBR, that is something that Redshift is just implementing and looking into. So this is the stuff, guys, you got to be thinking about. We're the same company. We're working together as two teams, and we're looking at what they're developing, looking at what we're trying to develop, things we also want to move forward with you guys for sculptural elements, and trying to see where we can start slowly trickling things in for things that we know you guys are asking for. I'm going to tell you this, guys. The things that you guys have been asking for years. I'm 18 years now developing ZBrush. Trust me, they're on my list. They're on our list. There are some things we're working on that you guys have been begging for. It is coming. Just give us some time to spin that pot a little bit, right? So with that said, all this is over. The one that I really love now, because I'm rendering out my hard surface now in Redshift, is the hollow glass. Is a really cool material to render with, because I'm using it, especially with emissives now, because we actually have a real nice emissives. This is a great way to get like some little thin glass right in here, right? So if I turn off progressive, and I even keep my threshold and now start using bucket render, the bucket render is what I do for my final render. Progressive is kind of like I like to experiment. And you can see already, just looking at the GI with the bucket render, it is going to even improve more. So when I look at rendering with Redshift, and this has just been for me for rendering across the board, I tend to, try to just get a really fast render as quick as possible. Then I'm like, I got pretty much what I want. And then I will turn this into a bucket. And then I will also say, and then I will knock it back down to this threshold of 0.1, and the render will even get better now. So when I'm experimenting, especially with these new materials, this is tend to be where I go with this and what I have. And so as you can see, I am rendering with this environment in the background. So if I hit escape key, we've sent this information to Redshift. So now if I go back into my light and I turn this off, and so now I'm just looking at this model, and let's go back and say that's hollow and then render that. It's now also seeing that the background's off. It's understanding that, and then it's going to render out accordingly. So it's still using the background to render with lighting and everything else like that. But now I'm also using just the gray-scaled background because I tend to also want to do this. So I just wanted to show, as you can see, the reflections of this particular material are still have that HDR, and see the here in the gray, it's now just rendering my background gray. I don't want to have necessarily the background in my render. So you do have this ability, and this is all setting. So once it sends to Redshift, we don't have to send this model in. You can see the type of materials. This is stuff we've never been able to get before also in ZBrush. So this is stuff like, there are a lot of like the paint car, like especially for me doing a lot of hard surface stuff. This is a great one for me. And then you can use poly paint with this. You can use just the material for this, right? And right now I'm rendering, bucket rendering, right, with a main key light at the top, and I'm using my background HDR. And then the cool thing about Redshift also is those filter systems that Pablo was using. You can also use your filter systems with all of these as well. So by us adding this, we've added a lot more new materials, especially a lot of liquid stuff. So there's an orange juice, there's a wine, there's the bubble, like the frosted glass, there's a pearl. Like, we were not able to make these materials before until we added all the other attributes to Redshift. So again, guys, this is just secondary, third wave of us constantly looking at what we can do to get to that point where we got that photorealistic renderer. You've got rendering that you can do inside of ZBrush if you want to, and then work from there. Okay, so this is just another way for you guys to work and have and go at them, right? So now if you load something else like this, right, that's a drone. Okay, we've got now this drone with some materials on it, and now I want to start playing with this. This has got a different background to it. Do I want the background in the scene or not in the scene, right? So you can turn that on and off. I would say let's turn it on, and I'm going to do even a stronger blur to this. I just want to have a little bit more blur in there. And then so now you have this object sitting in there, and then now you can say, hey, let's assign some materials to this. So here's a rough plastic that's blue, okay, from Redshift. I'm going to say, oh, let's assign it to this one right here. So I'm going to say material up here on the top. I'm going to say, let's assign it by material. Let's do a color. Let's do a fill object. Okay, and then I can go, let's also do it on this one. Color, fill objects. When Just made this, he had those being separate, right? So now this, as you can see as I'm moving, is taking on the environment and understanding that there's environment in there. And then, of course, when we render, and for the sake of rendering time, yeah, we've got our threshold pretty much turned all the way to the highest, which isn't going to give you the greatest render quality yet. And then I have my progressive render on with 12, but I still have denoising on to kick in. Again, I'll render that out. So it's just another way to get, now, you know, some renders out and get some other elements to you besides when you're done sculpting, get the rendering done and have that go as well for something to post online.
Yeah.
So I'm just render. Yeah, go ahead.
When we did like competitions, like for May the 4th, for like the ZBrush Summit and all that, we urged people, and we did. Actually, I remember you did a bunch of streams on rendering. So it's like being able to render like photoreal inside of ZBrush. To me, like especially for like those kinds of competitions, you want to get something done real quick. You want to get something with a good result, like really quick, like in maybe an afternoon or so. Like if you want to prepare or something, and then you have a few hours or maybe a few minutes to just get a render done. That's perfect. Just have a bunch of like car paint materials, like for your hard surface work. I mean, it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I saw a question too. It's a great question, right? So again, guys, to this, like the brass is brass. Like if you select brass, this is using attributes to make it look like brass. Same thing with gold. It's going to use attributes to make it look like gold. But you see there's a little green tint because the environment's got green in it. So it's got reflectivity of this and understanding that and capturing that in the material. And it's using the idea of PBRs with all the settings that you would need to make something look more gold, right? And you can see inside here, things change. So if I go back to bucket and I drop this lower, okay, someone asked, hey, is there a little area, an essence render region? Yes, there is a render region in ZBrush. Right now, you can't control the size of it, and you use your draw size. So if I want to say, hey, what's the gold in this environment kind of looking like right in here? I can say, hey, let's render out that region, that area right in there. And then what you'll see is a little squared area there is getting rendered. And see, there's all the GI kicking into play. So that's your global illumination, why it's got the little white dots everywhere. And then there's the gold kicking in, right? And then because this is encompassed in gold, that's why you're getting a little bit of that happening right in there. And then there's a render region. So you can do this with Redshift and you can do it with BPR. I'm just using the shortcut to do it. And what I actually did is I clicked on this button right here. So I'm in render. Okay, so I'm in the render menu and I clicked on this cursor button. And so I use the shortcut, which is Control R to do this. Right. So this is something that, I'll do a lot, especially when I've got a bunch of Redshift materialing that I really kind of want to see what's this going to look like on the higher quality and get a gauge of that while I'm still maybe playing with the lower quality at the same time for the full render. Right. So yes, that is possible. So it's a great call out. And one thing that I'd like to call out for this as well, that I think this is something very powerful, especially for me, for rendering. I tend to be like, hey, let's do this. And let's try this slider. Let's play with this. Let's play with that. And then I end up breaking things more than I'm making a better render for me. Rendering is definitely something I need to work on for sure. So what we did is we did a little something that's when we rolled out Redshift that I find very powerful for me is this render recall. So again, we're in the render menu here. I'm going to get rid of the lights so you guys can just understand we're in the render menu. Okay. And then I got this render recall and there's a slider. What is that slider doing? There are these modifiers. So lights, materials, color, material filters, and then stored render states. Okay. This slider is allowing you to go through the renders, right? So you guys see? It's going through these render types and what I've been doing. So if I say, hey, I really like this emerald. If I let go, it's going to put emerald now on the actual ship, right? Or the drone. So if I say, I kind of like this blue, if I let go, everything updates. I don't actually have to remember that, hey, this material was the one I was using. This is all being remembered now. So what's nice about this is, in this state, we got it back the blue and got back this original. We automatically select it. We automatically have given you that material, right, with all its attributes. But what's really great about this is, hey, let's do another render really quick. And this is where I find it very useful to start playing and seeing what's working, what's not working, is using that slider, right? So especially when, say, I'm using this material and it's something that, this is the blue I want, but maybe some of the attributes, or maybe I do maybe want to play with the color a little bit. Maybe it's a little too bluey for me. I don't know the correct terminology we can use here. I'm definitely not a color theorist for sure. All right. So I can say, okay, that looks okay, right? Maybe, I want to maybe add some metalness to it and say, okay, let's add some metalness to this now, right? So now it's got a little different look. I render that out, right? So my point is here is I start to now play with this, okay? And I'm starting to think about what could this render start looking like? And then I just keep sending renders. And again, this would work with the render region as well, right? So this one's now got a little more metalness to it because I've turned that on. There's some roughness in there. I can say, okay, I can just exit there and say, let's completely get rid of the roughness now, right? And then now that is got a lot more metal going on, and then render this. So there's more reflectivity in essence, right? It's not being blurred as much in this material, okay? Render that out. Take a look at what this is going to look like. I can just start maybe getting a bucket render. So I tended this to get a couple, like you can see it's a lot more shiny now. I'm like, okay, not sure. And you can say, let's go back to that color. So this is the color it's using. I want a little bit of a lighter blue on this guy, something more of more going to that aqua color a little bit. Maybe just, yeah, maybe something like that. I don't know. It's my world. I'm trying to live in it. Okay, so the point here I'm making is I'm starting to change a lot and do a lot and manipulate things. And sometimes...
Uh-oh. Paul? You there, Paul? I think we lost Paul.
I don't...
Did we lose you? Hello?
Now, again, I can say, I don't know if I really like that. I think I've messed that up. If you guys come back up here, right, and go to this recall,
I think we, Paul, I think we lost you there for a couple of seconds. I don't know if it was just me. I think we lost you for like 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, am I still
so
there?
You're gonna have to, yeah, we can hear you now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, as you can see, I'm cycling through the different renders now, right, and the different attributes of that material. Right, so that material is now back to being that blue it was here, and all the sliders are back to being the way they were, right? So you can see the metalness is now back to where it was. So this is what that it does, right? This is where this can be an advantage to you, playing with the rendering. If I go, you know what, I want there, that's what I want before I turned on metalness. And now you can see metalness is off. So this is part of all the updates, is having us to have that more materials available to us that have more of that photorealistic rendering, having all these attributes, along with improving the speed of Redshift, along with having that denoiser and those actual, also kicking those Redshift renders out on render passes and bringing it into something like a Photoshop, and then doing some layer passing on that and doing some paint overs. Okay, so that is everything that we have that is new, that this is all available today. We already dropped everything to you guys. Okay. So what I mean by that is you can go get this version of the desktop right now. We're on 2025.2 in the desktop. The iPad version's already there too. We're at 2025.3 there. I've re-put the link in this stream for you guys to go get the free file from Ian that he had made, that we're giving to you guys for free, along with some new Redshift materials. Guys, this is going to continue on. This is all part of our thought process of moving forward with pro projects and some other things. Once we start getting some more stuff that we are working on, you guys are going to have a lot more coming to you. So we're very excited, some things that we're working on the ZBrush side of things, and we're very much looking forward to getting that to you. This is just the release for this year. We will be having more releases along the year. So we've got more stuff that we are still just getting those last minute tweaks to before we can get it in your hands. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be cool. I'm excited. I'm excited for this year. Are you excited, Paul?
I'm excited, yes, but I also know what we're working on. So not fair to them for sure. So that is it for me. I don't have anything else to share with you guys. You guys are able to get that now. Again, the subscription is what you're going to need to get 2025.2 on the desktop, along with 2025.3. Again, you can go for just an iPad subscription if you wish through the Apple Store, and that is $89.99. Again, these are US prices annually, and then or $9.99 a month. There is a free version of ZBrush iPad. You do not get ZModeler and some of the other things, NanoMesh. You're not going to get that in the free version. You do need the subscription. If you go with the subscription on the desktop side, you get the subscription on the desktop, you get an activation of iPad, and then you also get Redshift available to you. So in essence, you're getting 3 activations with the $399.99 annually subscription. Again, US pricing, or if you go the $49 per month, you're getting 3 things for that pricing, not 1. If you're going iPad, you only get activation on the iPad. Okay, so this has been a lot of fun, guys. We got more. I'm actually streaming tomorrow on this channel. If you want to join me, I can dive in deeper and answer more questions for you. I usually go on Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when I go. Rodolfo, you're on Thursdays, correct?
Yeah, I'm next Thursday. Okay. So next week, I'll be in for ZBrush Live. So again, any questions you guys might have, iPad or otherwise, I'll also be there.
Yep. And then Ian streams every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I want to say his is 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. He likes to go for the 3 hour. I usually go about 2 hours. Okay.
And Daisuke is well, he's in Japan's time, so
yes.
If you're in Europe and the US particularly, that's probably going to be a little late for you or early, depending on your perspective. But yeah, I would be sure to check that out.
Well. Yeah, we can dive in deeper for all those streams, guys. So that's why we're pulling them up. Like that's somewhere we want to take the questions. We'll dive in things. We'll show you guys techniques and things like this. Obviously, the goal of this stream was just trying to show you what's available to you now with the update of ZBrush. To answer the last question, this is not the full Redshift yet. There's a lot to Redshift, right? So this isn't the full thing of Redshift yet. There's way more. We just got to do it in pieces of what we're doing with the Redshift team. So this is the first next step where at least we have all the attributes of a Redshift material, which is starting to set us up for things down the pipeline that we're working on. But it's not the full Redshift. However, you know, if you get a subscription of ZBrush, you'll get a CPU version of Redshift, and that can activate the CPU version through ZBrush. If you get a Redshift activation, then you can get the full version of Redshift, and then you can use that in Cinema 4D, Maya, Max, Blender, ZBrush, Houdini, and then it'll also use your GPU as well. So the Redshift that comes with the ZBrush subscription is the CPU version. But all the settings are there for you. Okay?
Yeah.
So almost got everything. If you want full PBR, you're going to need to go into like one of the other DCCs because there's no node-based inside of ZBrush yet, or we don't have anything like that. So obviously, if you want maps to run certain PBR stuff, you would need to go into a different DCC like Cinema 4D, and then you can have nodes there and have your maps run stuff for you. A little bit of time, guys. We got some sculpting stuff too that we're working on. So it's a balance now we're trying to do, and plus now we also have iPad stuff too to take a look at for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else last king for you, Rodolfo?
No. I just want to thank you, Paul. This was great. This was fun. First time streaming with you. This is weird. It's weird. Weird, but in a good way. It's in a good way.
It's great to have you. It's great to be a part of the team and have you on the team. And again, there are videos already available for you guys. So on our YouTube channel as well. I forgot to bring that up for you all.
All right. Right.
You can already see. And the reason why I'm bringing that is Rodolfo and Ian are the ones that were doing the videos. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to go get those newest videos. I'm just going to get the link for you guys. That already has the stuff about what we've also shared. Obviously, this is recorded. It'll end up on our YouTube channels as well. So you already will have that at your disposal. But there are specific videos that were made for the release of the new version. So here, let me get this over in my screen.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Oh, you can show it. You can show it. Yep.
Yeah. So there is a playlist for you guys right here. This is also for the iPad. Okay, so you can get a playlist here of seeing, especially going through our main man here, Rodolfo, made these videos as well. It's already getting some views. So I'll put the link directly to this. So for those of you that are on iPad, you have that. And then going back, you can have all the other videos here as well, which will include desktop videos too. You can have that link there. We also have updated in the beginning of the front of ZBrush, you'll be able to get the links directly from there too, especially on the iPad side. Yeah,
if you go to the home page, well, actually, if you're sculpting and you're not sure about some feature or whatever, you could actually access that through the help menu. If you go to the little question mark on the top right corner, there's a tutorials button. If you click that, it's just going to send you to that.
Yeah, here, I'll watch it so they can have an understanding of what we're talking about here. Let me switch back to hold on, I'm clicking on it. I got multiple.
I can show them. I have that.
There you go. So there you go. There's your menu, right? All the documentation has been updated as well, guys. So all that information's also in our documentation. So that's what the user manual will do, and you have tutorials, you have support. So here's the tutorials it'll automatically launch into your browser and give you right to that link. Okay. All the user manual has been updated and has been actually got a revamp to it. So you can get all the user guides here as well. It has all the ZModeler stuff in there too. So all this is being updated, so you guys have access to that. So on the iPad, there's a great location for you to get it. If you go back to the home page, okay, and go home, you also will have right here. This will take you right to the videos. This will take you to our ZBrush Live channel, which you guys are on right now, as you can see, coming up. And then this will take you right to the Pro projects on the iPad version. Okay. Here's something that, just to give you a little sneaky peek, this is something that I've been working on for iPad as part of just testing the features that we're adding and implementing. Here's a guy that I've been kind of putting together. I'm hoping that I can get him completely done, but I'm looking to cover him a little bit in our stream as well.
Cool.
Okay, this time I think we're done. Yeah.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this stream. Again, hopefully we see you in our streams coming up. I'm tomorrow, so hopefully I see you again tomorrow, and I'll be happy to answer whatever I can answer. There's definitely some things I can't answer, but I'll answer whatever I can. And then we've got Rodolfo also streams on this channel on Thursdays, along with Dice K, and then Ian is on Wednesday.
Yeah, that is correct.
And if you want, get the calendar. And the calendar will have all the streamers that we have, because we're not the only ones, of course, streaming. That's just us internally streaming. So by all means, please visit our calendar to get all the streams here. Because see, I can't stop talking. I will give you guys a link to the calendar as well, so you guys just have that in case you weren't aware of that, and see who else is streaming, because there's a lot of amazing artists that you guys can go and get information from.
Oh, and by the way, guys, just while you're still finding that, oh, there you go. You just put it up. I was just going to shout out, like, if you're testing out the new features and come up with some cool artwork, to be sure to just visit ZBrush Central. There's a lot of artists, like, every week just posting their artwork over there. And also, sometimes they do post breakdowns, which is something that we've been pushing for people to do, just post breakdowns or work in progress and then update your posts. And there's a lot of artwork just pouring in every week. And I would encourage you guys to just go in there, explore those posts, and create your own threads, create an account, and just go through and post your artwork. That would be, we're definitely, every week we're taking a look at them. And I mean, Paul's there every time, like, he's always there. but at least me, I go through them. I go through all the artwork like at least 3 times a week. So and we're always aware, like, people's artwork and engaging with the community. So it's good if you guys are there, just engage with the community as well, because we're a big family. And for the ZBrush community, it's a big family. That's that hasn't changed. So, you know.
Yep. Ditto. Yep. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Rodolfo. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next stream. Have a wonderful evening. Have a great day. Good afternoon.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.